Now for a demo of the release rocket. Kind of the background that went behind it was we were talking with the release management team about how do we go about deploying code that we've deployed in one of our integrated or perhaps a production environment, and then get that same version of code packaged into one of our other environments. So kind of like an environment refresh process. When we were talking with the release management team, they kind of came back, and the first one was, we'd like a button, please. So I said, what kind of button would you like? And they said, we'd like a button like on a jet fighter where you have the toggle and you could press it. And it was said in a joke, but I said, well, why not? Let's have a bit of fun. So there's a whole bunch of work that needed to be done to build out the APIs to do that. But at the same time, we could have some fun and actually build out a button to do exactly that. And that's what this is. So the release rocket, it's not intended to be serious, but it is functional. It does do exactly what we're describing. In this context here, it's running on a Raspberry Pi. I had a 2B lying around, so this is running on a Raspberry 2B. It's got a little Wi-Fi dongle to connect it through to the internet. On top, it's got an LCD screen. In this case, it's just resistive touch, but I did get one with the HDMI to HDMI connector, just so I could run a little video animation when it starts up for just better effect. It's micro USB, that's purely just for power, and that's a battery bank just to run it from there. I didn't bother trying to build that into the case. The case itself is 3D printed, and pretty much everything else, including the parts, came from AliExpress to keep costs down. So I'll now kick it off. I'll just press the power. You'll see that it starts up at this stage. I modified the Raspbian image, so I removed the little Pi logos, the texts that would scroll up at the start, as well as the power warning message as well, and replaced it with a little movie animation, the Spark logo here in this case. And then it loads up the application itself. It's written in Python using tkinter as the library around for the graphic interface. It's not particularly fancy, but it was more intended to be functional rather than pretty. In this case here, there are a number of LEDs as well that you'll note. There's an amber here that will indicate the process and the fact that the status of doing a deployment, and then it will either go red, in that case will represent that it's deployed, it's failed or rejected, or green if it was successful. So in this context here, I'm now just going to run through the process of selecting a deployment. So in this case, I'll choose one of our releases. This case will be 20.1. I'll select a domain, which will be online. We have an application there called Puzzle. Now this is where I would choose which environment is my source system. So which environment am I going to migrate from? In this case, I'll choose Into 2. And what environment do I want to go to? So Into 1. So I'm now going to work out what packages are involved in Into 2 and migrate those through to Into 1. So on the right here, we've now got the toggle. We'll open that up. You'll see that the light's on, so it says the Wi-Fi is connected. And if I pull the trigger, it will now kick off that deployment. So we'll do exactly that. Okay, you'll see now that the status has changed over here. The light will have gone flashing, and it will flash every 10 seconds as well. You'll see it's changed from awaiting to now and in progress. And if I look over here in Azure DevOps, we can now see at 16:16:44 that there is an online deployment, and there's the time up there. There's 16:17 now, but that's exactly in line with when we did it. Now that deployment will carry on. It's only a short deployment in this case for demo purposes. It'll keep polling every 10 seconds to check on the state, and it will go to one of two states as mentioned, either red if it's been rejected or failed, or green if it's successful. Now while that's going on as well, we've also set up the process so that it will send an email. So in this case here, there's the timing here. It's fired off for deployment. It tells us that that's the release number. The base environment is Into 2, going to Into 1, and that it's in the process of being triggered and running. So we'll now go back to the deployment. We'll see that it's successful, and also if we look on here, it's also showing successful. And then we also get a little email message that pops up as well, letting us know that it was successful and what had gone on. So likewise, if you choose an incorrect configuration, or if your build was unsuccessful and deployment was unsuccessful, it would just go to red. But this could be run anywhere. You could run it from the pub, you could run it from the office. It's not dependent on that. It's using effectively connection through to a Datapower API Gateway. We do have multi-factor authentication involved, so it's not just a case of being able to have the device and then being able to deploy to any environment you like. It does use some additional security credentials and tokens in addition, but it's more than sufficient for demonstration purposes of what it could be done. So yeah, if you ever wanted to be able to do a deployment from the pub, now you can.